Hello, friends. Welcome to Talking with Famous People. This lovely lady sitting beside me goes by the name of Rachel Apollosa.
Hi.
And she is the wife of Talking with Famous People, I guess you could say.
Aw, thanks, babe.
Mm-hmm.
I take it with such pride.
And I'm host Eric, host Talking with Famous People, and together, Rachel and I are live streaming right now. Mostly because we want to make sure the world remains informed about the truth. Like my new shirt? I got a new shirt. It's for
Peachy shirt.
this peachy shirt. Hello, Bacon. Thank you for the congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
This peachy shirt is, I see it as representative of the
They were broadcasting from Arcadia.
Yeah, it's 'cause
Arcadia
of
is
the-
huge.
it's because of the fires, you know.
Yeah.
We're right up,
They're-
up against the mountains. They had mandatory evacuation today
Yep.
in Arcadia, but we are actually quite some distance from where they evacuated, and they're never going to get around to evacuating us because it would have to be a fire that consumed the houses not next to the mountains, you know. We're fine. The mountains
Yeah.
is like the mountains are maybe, I don't know, like a mile up that way or something, or 2 miles or whatever.
Yeah.
If we were to drive to where the mandatory evacuation occurred today, it would take us, 10 or 15 minutes to drive there. Arcadia's pretty big. It's quite long.
It
in the
is
sense
very
that
long.
It goes all the way up into the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
So Chantry Flats, which is a local access point to the National Forest, is actually part of Arcadia. The National Forest, it was part of Arcadia before the National Forest came and claimed that the area of the mountains. So that's not part of the National Forest. It's part of Arcadia.
Cool.
Ooh, I'm gonna do this thing. Yeah.
Yeah!
Oh.
I know what you mean when you do that thing. This is definitely I like this shirt on you. It almost looks like you could feel the fuzz on the certain parts, you know?
Well, here's the thing about the Peachy folders. Is I think the Peachy folders are representing the generational distinction between me and Rachel.
Big.
Because I mentioned Peachy folders in passing one day.
Yep.
And I know it was because we were watching. I've been watching the Selena Gomez video.
Yes.
For that song.
Bad Liar.
Bad Liar, right? And it's a video that's set as a high school video, like high school students in the 70s. It's set in the 70s, and in order to make it period, quote unquote, Selena Gomez, you can very briefly see that she's got one of these peachy shoulders. Yes.
Yes, he did. I don't think it has a hole. He did it pretty cleanly.
But not because I did it cleanly, it's because somebody has finally gotten around to designing these things better.
Wow.
So they don't tear his shirt off.
Yeah, because it used to really make a hole right there.
A Firenado could indeed drop that shit on my house lickety split. But the point is that the fire would have to go from the mountains down through the residential neighborhood that's at the top of the foothills, cross the freeway, cross another big street, cross there's like 6 lanes on each side. I mean, it's not a small freeway. It's a massive. It's the 210.
Freeway. 7 lanes is huge.
It would have to jump that. It would have to then and then right after it jumps the freeway, then you're into the top part of my neighborhood. But we're all the way at the very bottom of my neighborhood.
Yeah.
So it's like it would have to go all the way down all those houses up from the top of the village area here, all the way down to the bottom of the village area here, and it's impossible almost. inconceivable. There'd have to be such a confluence of crazy events for us to be at risk of anything.
Yeah.
It seems it's just certainly not going to think even twice about taking any countermeasures or anything.
No, we're really lucky.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you to Octavia Silva. I appreciate the compliment.
I want to finish talking about my shirt.
Yes, me too.
So we were watching this video, and I said to Rachel, "Oh my God, look at that! Selena Gomez. She's got a Peachy folder." She's like, "What's that?" I was like, "What do you mean? You don't know what a Peachy folder is?" Well, when I went to school, it's like everybody had Peachy folders. There were only really a couple of ways you could go. You go Peachy folders, or you go Trapper Keeper. That was back in the day. Cool, Bacon. Glad to hear it.
Cool, that is exciting. Thanks, Bacon.
I wonder if it says somewhere on this tag, like, you have gotten a shirt with this new kind of tag or something.
I don't know, maybe.
But I
They really did get I mean, it's so.
It's great because it was difficult to pull out, but look at that. No, it's not.
It's clean.
It's not peachy like that. It's peachy like this.
Yeah.
When I went to middle school and high school, this was one of a couple of options that people went with. You went with Peachy folders. The reason Peachy folders purportedly were good things to use is because instead of having the pockets at the bottom, they had them on the side, so that it closed like this, so that when you tilted it this way or this way or this way, the papers didn't fall out. If you had regular folders, there weren't Peachy folders, the pockets at the bottom, so when you turn them upside down, they'd all come out at the top. Back in the day, this was, as far as I know, the only color they had was this yellow color. Then they went out of production for a long time, and now recently they came back. Like some company bought the product line or whatever, the brand or whatever you want to call it, and is putting them out in different colors now. But this is the OG one. This is the one that everybody had, and of course, if you Google Peachy folder drawings, the thing is, everybody at school, they put talk bubbles next to this lady, put talk bubbles next to her, or they put little fire out of her bottom of her feet to make her go shooting out. They'd put drawings maybe like a hamburger in front of this guy's face, so it looks like he's
has a hamburger in his hand.
So it makes it look like he's chasing a hamburger or something like that. And then this is the other pictures in the back here.
Yeah, we didn't even know that.
You got skiing guy, baseball people, and basketball people. So I actually researched these folders the other day when the topic came up with me and Rachel talking about it, and turns out it was invented or whatever, came up with, and the first ones were produced when it was like 1943 or something, and these were presumably like hip references to youth culture or something.
Yeah.
But by the time I was in high school or middle school, I just thought I didn't really think about it a lot. But in retrospect, they were weird folders that everybody have,
Everybody at the time.
And they all have these pictures on them.
I knew of Trapper Keeper because that in middle school, if you had a Trapper Keeper, you were cool. I had a Trapper Keeper. I think I had one in 8th grade. But I didn't know what a peachy. Eric was the first one to introduce me to Peachy. And they say that it's called Peachy too because of the fuzz on the
right, yeah.
Folders.
They used a kind of cardstock that was kind of furry, at least early in the year, until it kind of got rubbed off for the school year.
It's a great T-shirt.
I agree, Octavia Silva. I can't figure out why it would be the case that most folders are pocketed in the bottom. So then you got them upside down and all the papers fall on the floor, right? You're like, oh, I gotta pick up all my papers now. Well, like I said, when I was in middle school or even in high school, there really were, it seems like, two distinct approaches to school. That everybody chose one of those two. There was either Trapper Keeper or Peachy folders.
I like that there was this like battle going on.
Yeah. I mean, and so, obviously a lot of people got both. You know, you can get both, but you ended up using just one method. You know, it's like, for the people who had Trapper Keepers with Peachies, they put holes in the Peachies so that they could go into the Trapper Keeper.
Ah, that's inventive.
Mm-hmm. So fundamentally, you're just going Trapper Keeper at that point.
Yeah,
you're lying to
really.
yourself if you think you're hybriding it, okay? You're not
Yeah,
buying it.
no.
You might as well just go Trapper Keeper.
Seriously. I remember Trapper Keeper. Trapper Keeper was special because it had the flap. It was a regular binder, but it had a flap that would keep it closed with Velcro. That again, at the end of the school year, that like Velcro was barely working because you're opening it up so much.
I mean, the thing is, I would say there are different reasons to go for each. Trapper Keepers keep everything in some one central location, but you end up like filling it up.
Oh my gosh, so quickly.
The problem is it's trying to do so many things that doesn't have enough pockets for your papers. And so that's basically what Peachy folders are. They're all about the pockets of the papers, and then you have your paper that you write on in a separate thing, right? Whereas Trapper Keeper tries to be as like, well, we've got these folders, we've got all this organizational stuff for you, but if I try to say, okay, well, this first folder will be for English class, that's going to fill up with papers. The second folder is going to be for geography or something. That's not going to have any papers in it, right? So that's why you want Peachies, because they don't hold a shit ton of stuff, and you can always add another Peachy. You know?
I get it.
But I do think it's a good idea to put your Peachies in a 3-ring binder. But I never did that. But I think it's a good idea. I mean, thinking about it now, it seems like a good
Combination of those two, too. And Trapper Keeper also had like a pencil holder inside. It was supposed to be like badass, you know, like last the whole time. Plus they had like Trapper Keeper would sometimes like collaborate with like Disney or like Lisa. I remember Lisa Frank. That was a big deal. If you had a Lisa Frank Trapper Keeper, you were the it girl in town. I did not. I had folders though, but I didn't have a Trapper Keeper of. I didn't really. I remember having a Trapper Keeper for a very short time because I wasn't happy with it. I would rather just use the, $2.99 colored binders.
I want to answer Upton Plate's question. Why do I think Taylor's ESTP and ESFP and not ESFP and not
yeah.
ESFP? I mean, I've had plenty of. I know the guy pretty well, and I've had plenty of talks with him, and he's clearly TI. Anybody who would think that Taylor is FI tool, I mean, it's insane. It's an insane notion. He's so clearly FI polar and TI tool. I've debated him about that. You can watch some debate between me and Taylor about like what's a better type, ENTP or INTP. Just for cake, we did it, and you can see how TI is in a heartbeat. So, I mean, I don't know. I never considered the possibility that Taylor might be ESFP. There's nothing ESFP about him, frankly. Note the difference between the way Taylor interacts here in the chat, to the extent if he's even still here, versus Cloud, right?
True.
Taylor's actually engaging about things and saying, "Oh, well, this makes sense, this doesn't," or making jokes or whatever. But he's not just he doesn't think words don't matter in the way that Cloud does, and that's because TI means you don't have that position. I was thinking that, perhaps one of the most promising approaches to a typing test, if you're going to standardize one, is one where you're just presented with a long succession of sentences, and versus one sentence versus another, and have people people go, which sentence am I more likely to say, or is more like me, or do I identify with more? And just have allow them no other option other than you pick one or the other. You have to pick one or the other. Which one? If you hate them both, then pick the one that you find less appealing. Is it me? I hope it's not me. I have 0 dropped frames, so it's not me. Sometimes I have some dropped frames. Right now I have 0 dropped frames.
Wait, what?
Zaylen Black says an Enneagram test uses sentences like that. Well, the thing is about sentences like that is the reason I think this is possibly the best approach to standardizing a test is because, like, for example, a sentence might be like, if you don't have time to do it right the first time, how will you ever have time to fix it? Something like that, right? Now that's a sentence that's TE, basically, in its framing. It says you're not being efficient with your use of time. If you're going to do something, you should do it right to begin with, because it assumes also the TE thing, which is there's a right way that's determined by ordinality. In other words, it's not okay to start building the house before I pour the foundation. So the thing is, anybody's going to agree with that statement. That, it makes good logical sense. Nobody's going to say, I don't like that, unless they're really aware of cognitive functions and how that sentence suggests an implicit bias. But so what matters is to have positives versus positives, negatives versus negatives, and have people select between the two, because that forces them to say which they prefer when they conflict. So the thing about that is it also tells you, by comparing, like, every sentence that links to a given function should be compared against a sentence linking to each other function to see where it sits in terms of priorities, right? I didn't see it. I haven't checked my email today.
Yeah,
Did you see it?
yes, I did. But I also saw that not everyone might not get a pop-up because there's another thing against another flag.
Let me see what it says.
I just happened to remember. Maybe not.
Oh, it's probably in the here. Which is fine. Wait, this is the one that I already saw before.
Oh, okay.
Is there a different one?
I don't think so. It would be up there. I didn't read it. So we must have already dealt with it. We definitely did. If it's not on there.
I'm going to make absolutely sure. Okay, I don't see anything.
It was a false alarm, my bad.
No problem. What is this all about? I don't know what this is all about.
I don't either.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. So, people send me some strange emails sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes I respond to them. Do I watch NFL football? Well, I'm much more a fan of college football. Oh, sorry,
Me
David
too.
Sanderson. I forgot to read your email,
I
which
like
is why I
college
went in there in the
football
first
as
place.
well. That's so funny.
Whoops, our server is scratching its head. David Sanderson, I clicked here to see the timer. Oh, here's the updated version. Ah. I was looking at the non-updated version.
Ah.
Oh, I see. So it's like a chess timer.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting approach.
That is an interesting approach.
The other thing I would like to do is, what Matt needs if he really wants to run a debate server and be sort of debatey, then he needs somebody to actually judge, and
That's true.
Obviously it's going to be very difficult to be a moderator of a debate in which there's not a structure, because there's no appeal to a standard to make your point that, like, hey, it's my turn to talk, right? So moderating is going to be almost impossible without structure. But with structure, moderating is a very minimal job, but the important thing is that there be judging at the end. It's like people need a meaningful conclusion to the thing. My point is, I'm offering to judge a debate as well. So if you can get a couple of people, or if I may even do this independently, if I can find people around the channel, maybe put up an announcement saying, here's a resolution. If I can get two people who want to debate this, here's the structure I want to run. I would like to see people, debate on a live stream or on a recorded video, and have that debate play out, and then at the end, me say who I think won the debate. I render a judgment. People can disagree with the judgment, but at least it gives you a finality. It's like, he got robbed is a fine conclusion, but he won is not at that point. So I think it's important to have a judge. There simply isn't anybody more qualified to judge than me. So, I have no problem debating too. I'm not like, oh, I'm too good to debate people, I only judge. Not like that. But what I'm saying is, I'd be much more useful as a judge to everybody than I'd be as a debater. Because then people would understand, okay, I could win next time. Because the way I give my RFDs, which is reasons for decisions, I'd say, well, you didn't address his warrant here, or you dropped this, and he extended it and impacted it, and We have something called the Shadow Council, where high-ranked members hand out ranks to lower members in the server. Well, I don't have time to. I don't have an interest, put it this way, in spending my time debating on a debate server. It's like, I don't like to, at this point in my life, do much of any putting of information that isn't rendered public in some fashion. It's like debates on a debate server are not media objects, really, in the way that, say, the debate between me and Matt was. Supposedly, if it's true, scientists at MIT will go public tomorrow with what? What are they going to go public with? What I did to your mom last night, Morge? They should keep that private. That's just not appropriate for scientists to be discussing. Found evidence of life on Venus. I see. I'm curious about that too. Let me go to Google News. I'll type in Venus, and I'll just hope that I don't end up with a ton of articles about Venus de Milo. Phosphine detected in the atmosphere of Venus, an indicator of possible life? Let's see. There's a big press release coming out tomorrow at the Royal Astronomical Society. They want you to know it's big news. The press release has been issued in advance to some journalists under embargoes, but not others, like us. We've not seen the press release, but according to several sources knowledgeable of the details of the announcement, who are not under embargo, phosphine has been discovered in the atmosphere of Venus. Its presence suggests some strange chemistry going on, since phosphine is something you'd only expect to see if life, as we know it, was involved. The presence of phosphine is seen by many astrobiologists as a biosignature, i.e. an indicator of the possible presence of life. The detection was made by Atacama Array in Chile. From what we're told, the research includes that abiotic mechanisms, i.e. ones that do not involve life, that might produce phosphine, cannot account for the large amount that they have detected. The phosphine has been detected in the region within the atmosphere of Venus that is considered by some to be potentially habitable. There's a region of Venus that's considered by some to be potentially habitable? What? Really? I doubt it. I mean, think about it. How hot is it on Venus? It's like super hot there. I'm going to Google, how hot is it on Venus?
That's a good question.
The planet's surface temperature of Venus is about 900 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh my goodness.
How cold does it get on Venus? It grows cooler further away from the surface. It doesn't say how cold it gets, like what's the coldest it gets. What's the lowest temperature on Venus? 460 degrees. Wait. What's the temperature of Venus's atmosphere? So, okay, so here. Despite the harsh conditions on the surface, the atmospheric pressure and temperature at about 50 kilometers to 65 kilometers above the surface of the planet is nearly the same as that of Earth, making its upper atmosphere the most Earth-like area in the solar system, even more so than the surface of Mars. Due to the similarity in pressure and temperature and the fact that breathable air, 21% oxygen and 78% nitrogen, is a lifting gas on Venus in the same way that helium is a lifting gas on Earth, the upper atmosphere has been proposed as a location for both exploration and colonization. So that's interesting.
You want to move there?
No, thank you. I don't. I don't want to move there, but the troposphere on Venus contains 99% of the atmosphere by mass. By 90% of the atmosphere of Venus is within 28 kilometers of the surface. By comparison, 90% of the atmosphere of Venus is within 28 kilometers, whereas 90% of the atmosphere of Earth is within 10 kilometers of the surface. At a height of 50 kilometers, the atmospheric pressure is approximately equal to that at the surface of Earth. On the night side of Venus, clouds can still be found at 80 kilometers above the surface. The altitude of the troposphere, most similar to Earth, is near the tropopause. It's located slightly above 50 kilometers. According to measurements, the altitude from 52 to 54 kilometers has a temperature between 20 degrees Celsius and 37 degrees Celsius. What's that in Fahrenheit? Let me Google this. Stupid Celsius. Why do people use stupid Celsius? It's like it's Wikipedia.
Really?
Well, it's just stupid scientists. They're like, oh, let's use the stupid way of doing things. Celsius, my ass. It's like nobody cares about your Celsius. So it's between 68 degrees Fahrenheit and it's 37 degrees Celsius. Let's see. God, stupid Europeans. Will you stop already? And 98 degrees. So it's totally Earth-like. That's so weird. That is so interesting. I had no idea. It's completely Earth-like. The atmospheric pressure is the same as the surface of Earth, between 52.5 and 54 kilometers above the surface. The atmospheric pressure is the same as Earth, and the temperature is between 68 and 98 degrees, and the atmosphere is comprised of oxygen and nitrogen because those gases rise to the top on Venus. So yeah, actually, there very well could be life on Venus. It just wouldn't be on Venus. It would be in the atmosphere of Venus. It would have to be some sort of thing that Canada, come on. I hope Mexico doesn't use Celsius. Does Mexico at least use Fahrenheit? Let's keep Fahrenheit on the North American continent. That's surprising. I had no idea. You know, it's like, it's that much like Earth? It's incredibly like Earth, though, right? It's at Earth's atmospheric pressure, you know, within the normal range of temperature for life on Earth, and full of oxygen and not full of sulfuric acid. So yeah, it would be microbial. Obviously, you're not going to get. Well, I mean, obviously, you're not going to get a whole ecosystem that has like a food chain, really. I don't know how you get a food chain, and if all you had was this area of habitable band 53 kilometers above the surface of a planet. I don't understand how you'd end up with any kind of food chain, you know. But obviously, if there's water up there, then I mean, presumably you could have like an ecosystem of microbial prey and predators that exist not in liquid water but in a cloud or something. I mean, yeah, I obviously it seems odd to imagine that there could be life that doesn't ever need to engage with solid ground. It doesn't ever need to engage with solid or liquid, right? Okay, but the point is, according to that article, they found evidence that they according to current understandings can't really be explained except through biological processes. And we do know there's a habitable band, so even though we can't really explain, I mean, certainly that would disprove evolution, right? If there is life on Venus, we can eliminate the idea of evolution entirely. My theory is there was another planet, possibly Tiamat, beyond Mars that got blown up, by which became the asteroid belt. Tiamat. I'm gonna Google that. Tiamat. Tiamat. Planet. Is an alleged fifth planet that once existed between Mars and Jupiter. 18th century researchers first proposed it as a hypothetical planet, officially dubbed in the 20th century as Phaeton. Zachariah Sitchin promoted a much older name, Tiamat, based on the destruction of a personified Tiamat in the Enuma Elish. The mainstream scientific community, however, favors accretion for the formation of the main asteroid belt. What's Arecibo response? The Arecibo response is a mysterious crop circle which appeared in the farmland next to the Chilbolton radio telescope, apparently in response to the famous Arecibo message, which was sent into space in 1974. The response message itself differs substantially from the original Arecibo message. The 1974 transmission contained binary encoded information about our base 10 number system, organic elements needed for life on Earth, formulae for sugars and bases, the number of phase, blah, blah, blah. The message found near the Chilbolton radio telescope had the following characteristics. The number system is indicated as base 10, just like the original message. The atomic numbers for life is almost the same, except silicon has been inserted between oxygen and phosphorus. A new set of nucleic formulae is included, some of which appear to be derived from silicon. A new value in base pair amount, indicating more base pair sequences, roughly, The structure of DNA has been changed, indicating an additional strand to our own. A simplified representation of the intended sendee indicates a larger head as well as more pronounced eyes. Average height of the intended sendee is drastically less than the average human, comes up to about 3'4". The population of the intended sendee has been changed to reflect a much larger population to our own, 12.7 billion. This may or may not be a population value taken in 1974 or of that in 2001. The visual representation of the solar system has changed. The intended sendee's sun is smaller in size to our own. Not only this, but the 3 planets were highlighted instead of 1 planet. Indicated in the first message is the response message planets 3, 4, and 5 were highlighted with an extra emphasis on the 5th planet. There are 9 planets in the response message just like our own, however, it is purely speculative as to why this is so. The communication device has changed. Instead, it depicts a crop circle that also appeared near Chilbolton Observatory in 2000. The diameter of the communication device has changed. The new diameter is Not far from that message, another crop circle forms just before the Chilbolton response. This formation forms what could be described as a humanoid face generated from a series of dots which create a contrasting effect. James Deardorff, former senior scientist at the National Center for Atmospheric Research in Boulder, Colorado, has attempted to calculate the Arecibo response to be less than 2 chances out of 10 billion to be a hoax. I wonder how you calculate that. This is interesting. I never heard of this.
Me neither.
So, Rinse.com entered Arecibo crop circle, a clever hoax. The Arecibo radio telescope broadcast in 1974. The signal was about 1,000,000 times stronger than a typical TV transmission. It was sent towards a cluster of stars some 25,000 light years away, which means it'll take 25,000 years to get there. However, the signal will pass near some 30 stars along the way. Those are the bare facts concerning Frank Drake's transmission from Arecibo during the upgrade of that radio telescope. The signal was a 3-minute digital transmission. We are lulled into thinking it looks like a diagram on paper, but that is the translation of the digital signal into a graphic representation. As for the crop formation near Chilbolton Radio Telescope, the likelihood that aliens would even know that the graphic representation would be on a rectangular medium as it is converted to graphic form and displaying this untransmitted form back is extremely small but not likely at all. The small changes in the graphics reflect an alien source of convenient representations of our own lore regarding aliens. Yeah, too many questions. If we accept the presence of grays right here on Earth, we can also conjecture they would simply appear in the night and make their own symbols after picking up the transmission. Too many questions. The fact that the Chilbolton Radio Telescope is nearly an indication that somebody is nearby is an indication someone in the area was knowledgeable about Drake's Arecibo signal and could have contributed information to the human circle makers to construct this elaborate hoax to entertain us. Is that possible? I believe so, and it is more likely than aliens returning a graphic answer to a digital signal. It's interesting. So in other words, the point that they're trying to say about the crop circle is that, number one, the crop circle response, I guess, happened too fast. In other words, there's no way that any alien civilization could have received it and have that be a response. That's not there. We eventually learned, as far as the Arecibo message goes, we eventually learned that nobody can interpret all the message. Each scientist could only interpret the part relevant to their discipline. Frank Drake, when the signal was finished, scientists were asked if they could interpret the pictures and other objects in the message. Each scientist interpreted something different. And then the binary code is printed below, which is odd. Project Ozma. I don't know what Project Ozma is. This is interesting. It's easy to get sucked down a deep hole of Arecibo response. Arecibo response. So the one who did the calculating the odds, just to read how he calculated them. It says, what's the probability that hoaxers could have A, be creative enough to construct a new type of glyph like that involving rectangular binary units in the Arecibo response and no circles? B, repeatedly practice making the Arecibo glyph first in some field without those practice attempts being spotted from the air and reported? C, actually carry it out, producing all those right angle corners in the Arecibo-like pattern without making any mistakes? D, do it all in just a few hours overnight. E, do it without showing up on the security cameras there, one or more of which looked out towards the relevant direction. F, do it without leaving undesired trampled stalks or stake holes, etc. behind from having access to the location along some tram line and laying out surveying lines, etc., which would be necessary. G, not claim credit for it afterwards and not offer to show skeptics just how they did it by being willing to quickly reproduce the same designs within a pristine area of wheat field under the watchful eyes of veteran crop circle researchers. Concerning the probability of A, we have on a couple of occasions seen the handiwork of crop circle hoaxers in a contest. Their patterns consisted of the same elements and were the same type, as in genuine pre-existing crop circle formations, very little creativity. Thus, I would estimate the probability as being 0.3. Concerning the probability of B, since most of the crop circle formations apparently do get noticed, including hoaxes, practice attempts would be noticed and reported as either genuine or hoaxes. Surely several practice attempts would be needed in this case. However, such trampled down areas would themselves be, I'd say the possibility of it going unnoticed and unreported as less than 50-50, say again 0.3. Concerning the probability of C, namely actually carrying it out, producing all those right angle corners without making any mistakes, I noticed there are some 700 to 1,000 right angle corners of standing stock involved on a relatively small scale, and all those binary units of the returned Arecibo message, it would be difficult to generate even 30 of them without making a mistake, and once a mistake is made, with the wrong stems bent over to stay, they can't be raised again. If the chance of error was only 0.5 for each succession of the 30 corner units, the probability of making just one right angle corner come out right is quite high, 0.9782. However, the probability of one or more persons continuing the process on 800 of them without botching any of the corners or trampling down the wrong spot would raise this figure to the 800th power, which is very unlikely. Concerning D, whether they had enough time, this is pretty convincing, really, actually.
That is aliens?
Well, that is not a hoax. Because, and the thing is, the hoaxers would have to be, look, the thing is, one reason why we think it might possibly be a hoax, we could think it might possibly be a hoax, is we have examples of, for example, the MIT guys who hoaxed that football game where they caused a balloon to lift out of the middle of the field and during the middle of the game. It was quite an elaborate prank. It was a prank, not a hoax. But the thing is, if anybody's going to be inclined to inclined to successfully figure something out like this, it's going to be very smart people who might also understand the Arecibo message and how a response to it would clearly be responsive, right? So it's conceivable. It's conceivable that it's a hoax. It's conceivable that it's man done. And we don't really have a preferable alt to it. It's not like, well, what's more likely than people did it? Well, I mean, you can argue successfully it's unlikely people did it, but you can't really successfully argue that it's more likely that something else did it because you're appealing to facts, not in evidence. In order to say that it's more likely that aliens did it, we'd have to establish first of all that aliens exist.
True. It's cool though. Honestly, it really is. It's fascinating. I like that it has a look of a person too.
Yeah.
One of them. So interesting.
But I've seen a number of things about aliens that I find fairly convincing. Like, that even though there's this quality of, the more extraordinary the claim, the higher the standard of proof. So if I'm claiming that aliens exist, that's a high standard of proof.
Yeah.
If I'm claiming that Sasquatch exists, it's a high standard of proof. But there are several things I've read and seen and heard about events that are typically attributed to aliens that I think you could successfully argue, even if we don't know aliens exist, it's more likely that an unknown force made this happen than one linked to humans. I think it's possible to make that claim on some of the things that some of the documented encounters and stuff. Do I think any of the prominent structures on Earth were made by aliens with the assistance of aliens? I don't think there's any reason really to believe that. So, in other words, I don't find it extraordinary that human ingenuity can make the pyramids. It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I agree with Eric on that.
It's exactly the sort of thing that the esoteric kind of philosophizing of the ancient world would produce. This stuff that's arbitrarily lined up on astronomical stuff. Well, I mean, the ancient world was obsessed with astronomy. There was no difference between astrology and astronomy, really.
No, not back then.
So it's like they both felt that the stars were hugely significant in determining how the world happened and stuff, and also that, you should also remember that back in the ancient world, everybody saw a fully realized night sky every night. In the modern world, people who live in cities never really see the night sky. They just see a couple of stars up there. It's accordingly less relevant. It's proportionally less relevant to how much less you can see it. So yeah, if you've got somebody with power, or especially autocracy, like a pharaoh or something, and the capacity to move lots of manpower, you can accomplish amazing things. Even without a lot of manpower, you can accomplish amazing things.
It's true. It's funny that you're talking about mythology, because I took a quiz today on which dark mythology creature or character I would be, and I got Hel from Nordic culture, and she was the one in Ragnarok. Yeah.
Helga.
It's a little bit different.
Yeah. That's not really like you.
No. Well, it was saying the reason why it said it. I have it. I don't really understand. Okay, here we go. It says, Hel in Norse mythology rules over the underworld where many of the dead dwell. Her name translates to hidden, surely to do with her ruling. Although she is generally considered a goddess, she is more of a literary personification of the grave than someone who was worshipped. So she's like the death card.
Ethan McDonald says, why do I know tons of SFPs and SJs but very few STPs in real life? Well, foremost because SFPs and SJs are probably the most common types. STJs, SFJs, and SFPs are the most common types, I would suspect. STPs are less common because beta quadra is less common. It less commonly occurs that you've got NISE going with FETI for whatever reason. I would say that they're why beta quadra is an oddly unbalanced quadra. It's like because of the lack of particularism in the knowledge function, they are the most imperious quadra. Like they see Taylor is the person who told me first, like, regarding this channel and my participation with people and various things around here, that, you know, I need to own that I am not one of the people that I'm participating with, but rather distinct from and have a separate position and role. Oh. And my native egalitarianism was always saying, basically, you know, I was loath to appeal to authority in any way, right? Or appeal to status or differentiation between people. But the fact is, you know, beta quadra is more right about that than an alpha quadra. Alpha quadra's perspective on it may be kind of noble, but it's also kind of naive. The reality is, most people aren't alpha quadra, or, you know, a majority of people aren't alpha quadra, and as a consequence, they have different feelings about the idea of leadership. Alpha quadra doesn't value TE, so we're not looking for outcomes, which means, and we're looking for interaction with people, which means we're looking for non-productive interaction with people, which is exactly contrary to leadership, you know? But we can learn from beta quadra. If you get in a relationship with a beta quadra person, there's a balancing of the two quadras.
Absolutely, and I fucking love it. It's a really nice match. Jeez. Oh, see, like when I hopped onto the comments before, it was because I was outside and it's a really nice evening, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna smoke outside. And then I came back. And so, like, sometimes I do hop onto the comment section. But I don't really, like, I don't feel like it's a big deal. Like, it's not like I don't know.
What don't you feel is a big deal?
That, I hop onto the community, like, the chat.
Oh, of course, it's great. I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
Oh, that's okay. Oh my god, big yawns for little Eric. Oh, guys, that was just a really big one for you all.
What questions do you currently use to identify dominant FI? I have a couple of FI questions, but I mean, the thing is, one of the ways I can identify dominant FI is by asking the question, which sentence do you more identify with? I'm not fussy. Those people might be fussy, though, and I'm worried about them not being happy. Or those people can worry about their own feelings. I'm concerned about my feelings. That's basic, sort of obvious question to ask. But then the other way I can do it is by determining whether or not how people respond to scenarios. What do you value more in general? Kindness or courtesy? Well, FI DOMs are likely to say, I need to know more before I can answer that question. In other words, I can't really deliberate about this without having authentic connection to it in some way. You're going to have to give me more information in order to answer the question. So that correlates with FI. When they don't like to answer things as a general rule, but rather feel as though they can't meaningfully answer the question without a experiential valuing link to it. Jordan Peterson debates Eric Strauss, who would win? I mean, I would win, but we'd have to find something to debate that we meaningfully disagree on. Like, basically, Jordan Peterson and I are in agreement about things, but we certainly could debate the role of empirics in. We could debate evolution. I'd whip his ass on evolution, you know.
I want to third that notion of Eric winning that debate. And also I appreciate that one since Mom. I'm so polite. Like, it's just in my nature. It's like a fucking reflex. Like, I don't even really mean to do it on purpose. It's just, that's how it's been for so long. But I appreciate that. If I didn't do, like, I'm just being me. And thank you. I like stripes a lot.
Evelyn says, I don't know if it's just me, but I'm pretty good with TE. I'm an INTP. I don't love to lead, but I'm pretty good at it when I've been thrown into it, which happens fairly often. Sure, I mean, fifth slot TE is the best TE of Alpha Quadra, but I will relate the story of Delilah to remind you of what it means to ignore something. So, Delilah was born, and we were stuck at the hospital until late the next afternoon because they wouldn't release Delilah because she hadn't peed. She wouldn't pee. Finally, an experienced nurse came on, ran warm water over her leg, and she peed. She was born with ignoring SI. So it doesn't matter how good you are at it, quote unquote, if you always forget to pay attention to it at critical junctures. This is the thing. For probably INTP, there's an equivalent. For ENTP, I can go into places where my introverted intuition is doing small jobs. Introverted intuition is supposed to do a big job, right? It's supposed to tell you what the whole truth is. My introverted intuition does small jobs. It says, is this part of the whole truth? Yes. No. Is this part of the whole truth? Until I've done it with each of the little pieces of it. And then I go, hopefully, if I get it all the little pieces right, then I look at it and then I see, oh, that's the whole truth. So your TE is probably equivalent. You can utilize it very effectively as long as it's limited in its scope, but it never defines your frame.
Tom Jickelson, question for Rachel. Are you more likely to ghost someone or door slam them? What do you mean by, what are your definitions of ghost and door slam? Because I find them to be the same thing, but if you have a different
I guess door slam would probably include some tearing him a new one on your way out.
Then it's door slam.
Introverted intuition says, wait, you think you could whip Peterson's ass in a debate? That seems kind of arrogant, to be honest, but I don't know how much of a debater you are. So, introverted intuition, that is an excellent way to approach that, okay? I just gotta say, you have successfully executed a safe objection, in the sense that you're right, it does seem kind of arrogant, and Jordan Peterson is quite smart, and normally you would be right to be skeptical, but you even indicate the precise reason why you're not sure you're right in this instance, which is you're not sure how much of a debater I am. The fact is, I am a professional debate coach and have been for years. I have national champions and stuff. I do competition flow debate, and Jordan Peterson wouldn't stand a chance. So that's why. It may sound kind of arrogant, but
it's the truth.
Yeah, everybody's an intellectual, right? And so intellectuals all think they can do two things: teach and debate. They can't do either. They're separate skills.
Sure.
Being an intellectual, being a debater, and being a teacher are all different things.
Now, I have a question because on that personality test that I took yesterday, I came up with number 1 for curiosity. My mom took the test and she scored high on learning, love of learning. What's I find what's the difference between those two things also?
Okay, so love of learning means she understands skills development or acquisition of stuff through experience, SI, as a tool function. I will experience this curricula, whatever it is, and I will thereby attain an experiential, particularized version of it for myself. And that's how I know things. So what she's saying is she likes using her tool function. What you're saying is you value your fifth function.
Mm-hmm. I do.
So for me, I find it I'll respond to you in a second, intuition. This is what I'm talking. You distracted me. He does seem very smart verbally, right?
Yes.
There's no disputing that. That's why I'm saying intellectuals, rhetoricians, or argumentationalists, and teachers are different things. Everybody who understands a subject well seems to think they can both teach it and debate it. Except the problem that Jordan Peterson has is he doesn't actually understand what comprises the debate. So if he makes a position statement and he has no framework that's stated explicitly, then he's already 5 steps behind, right? If he's arguing a given point, there's a different way of understanding what you're saying when you are a full metaphysician. Like Jordan Peterson, for one thing, isn't a fully metaphysical type. So he links everything back to an empirical frame, whether it's legitimate or not. That's going to kill him in a debate round. He has to win the framework argument that the empirical frame is preferable to the non-empirical frame. Instead, he assumes it, right? This is the sort of thing that non-debaters aren't cogent. They just aren't aware of.
Rachel, love of learning, mastering new skills, topics, and bodies of knowledge, whether on one's own or formally, related to the strength of curiosity, but goes beyond to describing the tendency of to add systematically to what one knows. Curiosity, taking an interest in ongoing experience for its own sake, finding subjects and topics fascinating, exploring, and discovering.
The thing is, SE does tend to correlate with people viewing you as forceful in some sense. But that's not because SE is forcefulness or force. Extroverted sensing means, specifically, you are attending to the doing of things. So it doesn't. It's as meaning free a function as you can get. Whether or not that's perceived as forced by somebody else is different. So love of learning is structural, whereas curiosity is explanatory. I think what you'd say is love of learning, as it's tested by that test, is indicative of somebody who enjoys internalizing information via experiential repetition, whereas curiosity is about creating new information and putting it out there. As an SI 4th slot person, NI 5th slot person, I find it very comforting to receive information, to watch movies and stuff, and to be in a receive mode. I don't naturally go to that receive mode as often as it would be rewarding to me. And the reason for that is because part of having a cognitive function stack means you're biased in favor of some approaches and against other approaches irrationally. That is to say, it's not in your interest necessarily to be that way, you just are. So the thing I'm saying is, where I'm going with this is Rachel is probably comforted by the putting of information. In other words, the making of things and such. She finds it comforting. But it's not something she actively thinks about as like, oh, this will comfort me. It's because it's not her most natural or reflexive way of being. That's the weird thing about your 4th and 5th. It's like when you go there, you're gratified that you did. You're satisfied by them, but you just don't really, by default, think to go there unless something's going wrong with your default way.
See, David Sanderson, I think it's interesting what you said there, that you would love to see a debate between Eric and Jordan Peterson. I would love to hear the debate more, because I feel like Eric has more of the words than sort of Peterson does.
Well, I mean, the most important reason why I would defeat Jordan Peterson, there's one reason more than any other that I would defeat Jordan Peterson. It's because to the extent that we disagree, I'm right and he's wrong. So I can possibly beat people in debates when I'm wrong, okay? But it's more of a toss-up because ultimately, when you're saying you're going to beat somebody and you're wrong, you're saying you're going to rely on your debate skills to muddy the truth so that you can win the round. But the thing is, and so that's always a more sketchy proposition. The reason I would defeat Jordan Peterson on the evolution debate, for example, is I'm right and he's wrong. The reason I defeat him on the Big Five versus cognitive functions debate is, again, because I'm right and he's wrong. So even if you were to assume that he's supernaturally talented at debating and doesn't need any actual formal training at it, and that all the study of argumentation that formal rhetoricians do is really meaningless, it doesn't actually have any impact on whether or not you argue more or less effectively, even if we accept all of that, the problem that Jordan Peterson has is he's wrong where he disagrees with me. In other words, I've parsed out all the arguments on both sides of the thing and determined that what the strongest arguments are, and that's how I chose my position. I didn't start with a position that I was attached to, nor an area of study I needed to defend. So Jordan Peterson foremost needs to defend this area of study called psychology, and he's incorrectly assumed that the only way to defend this is by laying claim to the empiricism of science. But of course, by trying to eliminate the process aspect of human being and replace it with an attribute metaphor, he does a disservice to our actual understanding, and he predicates a lot of his own arguments on something fundamentally wrong. So it makes him more susceptible to getting beat, even if I was exactly the same level of debater as him. I would win because I'm right.
You're Yetzara Mael. Watch yourself. You better check yourself before you wreck yourself.
The point is to find which one of you is your superior self. I mean, I only have one of me. I can manifest more or less optimally, but I don't have a superior self. You know, I either fail to uphold the values that I rationally and spiritually understand to be so, and when I do fail to uphold those, to a greater or lesser extent, I'm aware of that. In other words, consciously, willfully making a wrong choice, or I'm unaware of that, which means I'm making a mistake and I'm going to have to learn from that mistake. It's one of those two things. There is no multiple selves in me. There's no one superior self. It's just okay, those metaphors don't mean anything. Yetzrael. Yeti.
Also,
okay,
you
so
spelled his name wrong.
When you say that ENTP is your ego, not your higher self, your true essence, what is the distinction you're making? How do we know when something's your true essence? Do you have any criterion for determining what comprises one's true essence and distinguishing it from ego?
Hey, Sandy.
Certainly not Zizek. I like what Sam Harris does. I think Peterson and Sam Harris are kind of neck and neck. You know, the problem is, at the end, I mean, who's the best debater of them all? Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro would kick any of their asses. Why? Well, because he's an actual debater. He's not just an intellectual playing at arguing about stuff. So, I mean, the thing is, you may not like Ben Shapiro, you may not like his positions on things, but you are using an interested calculus if you've concluded that he is therefore a worse debater. It's like, you may think he's more wrong than those people, but in terms of actually doing his job rhetorically, he would beat any of those people. I mean, granted, look, if there's two possibilities here with Ben Shapiro. He might be an ESTJ, he might be an ENTP. Being a good debater, again, does not make you necessarily right. So the reason I'm so confident I could defeat Jordan Peterson and those people is because I'm both a better debater and right. Ben Shapiro, I mean, I agree. I'm not saying he's well tested. He certainly hasn't been tested by the fire of me. But I'm saying you can tell when he talks, he understands argumentation better than those other people. And that's not a good thing in the hands of somebody who's wrong. I'm not saying Ben Shapiro is wrong necessarily about everything or anything in particular. Really, well, I mean, Sam Harris, I would say, is the best of. I mean, what I've always said about Ben Shapiro is the problem is he's incorporated groupist thinking into his overarching rhetoric, and it makes him vulnerable. If Harris attacked that point, then it makes good sense that Harris would have defeated him. And I do think that Harris did a generally very solid job. I like him better. I'm more aligned with his positions on things than I am with either Jordan Peterson or that other one you mentioned.
Sam Harris?
No, Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson. There was another third one that was Zizek. Zizek is terrible. Zizek is just scuttling. Zizek is only scuttling. Okay, but okay, so
Yetzraya Mayal, you keep on spelling his name wrong. His name is Eric with ERIC, no K.
Okay, but Yeti, how do you know it's higher? Like, is it physically above the other one? Is it more real? And how do you know it's that? Or are you just making up metaphors?
Yeah, it sounds like metaphors.
Yeah, it's just nonsense metaphors. Okay, that's nonsense. Yeah, now you're just talking nonsense. We're not playing. I'm not going to play nonsense. If you want to tell me that I have a higher self, I mean, I've run Zizek, Xavier reads. I've run it, which means I've used Zizek cards in rounds to try to do what Zizek does. Zizek is a scuttler. He doesn't argue points. He makes it difficult to understand what his points are, and he intertwines what you call like definitional red herrings, so that it's hard to figure out why exactly this thing is wrong. I could give you a great example of exactly Zizek's sort of stuff in this case that I had to unravel for my debater last night, or this morning, I guess. So he pulled down from the wiki a Catholic school app that says compulsory voting, it should be affirmed because it's the only way of adhering to a categorical imperative, and we should use a deontological framework. Okay, so basically it's saying we use a rights-respecting framework and a rights-respecting framework compels us to have compulsory voting. Now, this runs afoul everything you're thinking naturally about the issue. Compulsory voting is an issue of whether people ought to have the right to vote respected, or whether it ought to be considered a duty like jury duty. So anyway, this case, what it very trickily does is it cites Kant in his analysis of how mandatory cooperation changes the moral calculus of the categorical imperative. Namely, that the normal categorical imperative assumes voluntarism. But in situations where a group is mutually compelled by a central force to cooperate with an endeavor, then there's a second level of moral indication there that suggests that even though it's not voluntary, you can't morally do less than your fair share in that context. So what that would tell us is that Kant is saying with things like taxation is only just if it's 10% for everybody. With things like jury duty is only just if everybody does an equal amount of it. Now this fuck, this kid from this Catholic school, is trying to pitch this actual analysis of Kant that's legitimate as meaning that compulsory voting is subject to this thing. Okay, so compulsory voting, therefore, is an example of something that's mandatory cooperation, and as a consequence, the deontological imperative doesn't preclude it as it normally would. So he's positioning for example, an exception that would normally preclude it but doesn't in this instance that Kant lays out as an indication that failing to uphold that categorical imperative you normally would is upholding it as a general rule because it's not violating the exception, which is bullshit reasoning. And then the second thing he's saying is compulsory voting is subject to this because that's how it is with mandatory cooperation. Except he's affirming that we should make voting compulsory. And he's claiming all the impacts of it being already compulsory and how that impacts the moral calculus, misrepresenting the exception to the deontological imperative as a new framing of the deontological imperative in that different context. So it's like, that's the sort of stuff that Zizek does. He ties those webs of confusion so you can't get to the fact that what he's saying is bullshit. But I can, but most people can't. But I'm an expert at that. Yeti, my name doesn't have a K on the end of it, okay? E-R-I-C. That's what she's saying. It's not, you have to call me host Eric with a K on it. That's still wrong. I don't have a K on my name. I don't find it disrespectful. It doesn't bother me. It bothers people with FE a little higher than me, probably. And you're not annoying. You're not annoying me anyway. But if you're convoluting the truth, how can you attempt an objective argument? Well, I mean, whether or not you're being objective depends on whether or not you're being honest with yourself about the nature of your arguments. So if the guy from the Catholic school, he must know he's fudging the link, right? People do it in debate all the time. But so he's being objective about it. He's saying, I'm going to prioritize the outcome of winning the debate round. And I think that this argument is too difficult for people to unravel. So by the time they get it figured out, the round will be over and I will have won it. There's nothing non-objective about that. It's just prioritizing the one subjective outcome over another. Namely, what should I prioritize? Being absolutely right or winning the round? Well, they're both subjective considerations in that context, so you might as well win the round. All right, then, Eric, Yeti. Your father's an alchemist. That's great. You know, I've been looking for a professional alchemist for a while now. There just aren't that many alchemists left in the world, and I've got all this lead that I'd like to transmute into gold.
I have a question. What
great.
is Yeah, he can. So, can you turn it into gold for him?
Yeah, please do. Yeah, I've got a bunch of lead. I'll send it to you.
I wonder what this means. You know?
What are you looking up?
Like, is it an can you make alchemy out of that symbol, this one? Or your dad? You know, because he seems to be a very wise person.
Transmute that middle finger into I love you, I think is what she's saying.
Yeah, so, I love you.
Alt says, generally the best arguments are the simplest. I don't think that's true. Obviously, the effectiveness of an argument links somewhat to how well you can coalesce it down into a concise expression. But it's not the case that a concise expression of an argument is the same thing as a simple argument. Generally speaking, the truth is it's easier to deal with an unnuanced version of an advocacy than it is to deal with the actual truth. So it's like people want to say, meow, meow, we should do meow, meow because meow, meow. The truth is, often, your predicted impacts are meaningless. They're going to lead, if we take that approach towards policy making, blah, blah, blah. I have a lot of reasons as to why, it's a bad approach to take, but it's easier to say, common sense just tells us if it has good outcomes, we should do it. That's the simplest argument, but it's the wrong one. So, I get what you're saying. In other words, it is true that verbosity has a somewhat of a correlation to bullshit, but it really depends on the individual using it. Whether or not the verbosity is bullshit or not depends on the specifics of the verbosity. This was when I lived in the Zeta Reticuli star system. I loved it there. You know what there was there?
Me too, actually.
So much stardust.
There was a lot of stardust, and it was also kind of stardust that you can turn into gold. So we could have that gold right now.
You should remember as well, Darlene, that the stardust in that particular solar system was just like glitter. So we were so sparkly.
movie?
We were so sparkly when we came back. We were covered in glitter.
Oh, and I sang like Mariah Carey?
Yes.
Oh, that's so fun. Glitter is so fun.
In the fifth recreation of reality, I lived in Zeta Reticuli. Yeti. The shit you say. The shit you say. I'm having trouble. Just like your namesake, the Yeti, I'm having trouble believing you exist.
Oh, Katie, I will give you the attention.
This is the
All
seventh
the attention
recreation.
because you give me the attention.
Okay, guys, this is the seventh time we're going to go through and reenact this Civil War battle. I was hoping to get this done in one take. But since some of you can't seem to follow instructions, we're going to do it a seventh time. Okay? You stand over there on that hill. You stand on this hill. You pretend to shoot each other. You fall down. There's no, I got a little bit of life left, and you get back up and pretend to shoot them. No, it's not cool. You die in this battle. You've been devoted to truth and academic studies. I see.
Through with you. Yes, you're the Kitty Patrick winner.
Well, hopefully your devotion pays off. I mean, do truth and academic studies reciprocate your affection? Or are they just using you? Are you getting friend zoned by truth and academic studies? I think you might be, and that's, you know. Just remember, you gotta tell the truth. Hey, we've had 3 conversations. You show me your boobs. So you gotta tell the truth. Otherwise, the truth won't listen to you.
Friend zoned, right?
Yeah, you get friend zoned by the truth. You don't want that. All the ESFPs I know are really smart. Dave Sanderson. Come on now, don't be mean. Eric, I don't know if you saw this on the other live stream, but I'm offering to have a discussion with you sometime, and if you need an email to set it up, I got you. It's coming. Sure, we can chat. I could end this. We can chat right now. You want to chat right now? I'm very grounded in reality. For example, I work out daily. Is that an example of being grounded in reality? Working out daily? I don't work out at all. So, does that mean I'm not grounded in reality? Is it one possible way to be grounded, or is it the only way? Is it key to grounding? Okay, well, Xavier reads, you want to go to the room, I can go over there right now, and I don't have to even leave the stream. If you want, I could put Mia on the Mia, with Mia, and then, also I should mention, I guess it was last night, what's your name again? Xavier reads. I should mention that I don't know if you've heard yet, but some aliens came by last night when I was at your mom's house and put some crop circles on her face.
It looked a lot like a person.
It did. I think it was secret code for something, but the aliens were probably talking to me, because obviously she doesn't look at her own face that much. I didn't look at her face that much either, but yeah, I saw. I am systematic and intuitive. Good. Good for you. Well then, I'm sure your life is filled with systems and intuition. Oops.
Bye, everyone.
Are we leaving?
Oh, I thought you were going with Mr. Sanderson.
No, Reeds. Xavier Reeds is not a let's do it now that kind of person.
Oh, he's not.
See, that's the thing is most people aren't really into. Oh, let's do it now then. They like to plan things.
I did.
You did. You wanted. That's because you knew what you wanted. You were going to go after it, and you got it. Have you ever met ISTPs who are competent at debate and general metaphysical topics like philosophy? Well, alt, I would say, by and large, not very much. So, I've coached ISTPs. I've coached plenty of ISTPs in debate. And the problem that they have is they keep looking for the single argument that can't be beat. They don't get that there's always an answer to everything. Some answers are less convincing than others, but I would say ENFPs are ESFPs who try to respect language somewhat. I got you, dog. I got you, Xavier Reeds. Ain't no problem.
Ain't no problem.
What type is most likely to be an ENTP? An ESFP? I think it might be ESFP, but I can't quite put my finger on why. Ooh, it's a tough question. It's a good one. Yeah. I think ESFPs probably are ESFPs because they're not ESFPs, goddammit. Eric, do you know any type ones? Let me think. Who was a 1 in my life? Delilah's a 1. Delilah's a type 1. She's neither 8 nor 9. And what that means is she doesn't battle with me very long before she just rolls her eyes and goes, okay, forget it. Just fuck off then. You know, it's like she doesn't make peace. She doesn't battle. She just, it's like, okay, I'm not going to mess around with your bullshit, Eric. I'm going to state my conviction that Eric is Abraham. Except, listen, Yeti, here's the thing. I'm Eric. You said it already. So the fact that I'm Eric means I am concurrently not Abraham. My middle name's not Abraham. My last name's not Abraham. I have a former employee named Abraham.
Yeah.
But Eric is not Abraham. Say that you're convinced that Eric is Abraham is saying, I'm convinced that words don't mean anything. The core fear of 1 is being corrupt. How do you see this in Delilah? I think the core fear dealt with in 891 is anger. I mean, the core negative emotion is anger. Yeah. The core fear, the negative emotion being fear applies to 5, 6, 7, and the negative emotion of shame applies to 2, 3, 4.
She's definitely got a 4 though somewhere else.
Oh, she has a 4 too, but she's probably a 7 or 5. I suspect that 5, 6, 7 is last in her tri-type. I think she's probably a I don't know 4, 1, 7.
Yeah, I think she's a 4 first. She's an individual.
She's very like my own standards, not yours.
Yeah.
You're doing that thing. You see Rachel walking downstairs? Hey Rachel, you don't get something from the basement for me?
Here, I can do the elevator too. What number you want to go on?
Or can you just go down to the basement and grab me a can of peas, please?
Oh yeah, sure. Bing.
She'll be back in a little bit. She's gonna go down to the basement and get some peas. I have a desperate hunger for peas all of a sudden. And we keep our canned peas in the basement naturally.
Sure, okay.
Like everybody, we keep our. We've got both stairs and an elevator down to the basement.
Keep on like sliding.
Well, we also have an escalator. Can you please demonstrate that? We've got the elevator, we've got the stairs, we also have an escalator. See? It's amazing. We've got so many ways to get downstairs to the basement. Now, Rachel, can you demonstrate the fireman's pole that we have to slide down to the basement?
I did physical comedy. Does that make me an ENFP?
It's probably very satisfying because it's a combination of doing SE and any. It probably is comforting to you to do that in the same way that receiving stuff from me is comforting. She could have fallen down the stairs. Yeah, now tumble down the stairs.
Seriously. Let's put this babe back there.
I know how to do it. It's just it's a little bit of effort that I don't feel like putting in right now. Eric, how would you debate an INTJ? What advice would you offer to an INTJ for debating? I mean, INTJs can be some of the very best debaters. In my opinion, the best debaters are ENTPs, INTPs, and INTJs. And I don't say ENTPs are better than INTJs or INTPs. It's a toss-up. They have different styles. If anything, I would say INTJs have the highest ceiling. So INTJs continue to get better after INTPs sort of semi-plateau. And the reason is because they're ultimately viewing everything they learn in debate through the frame of how this wins them rounds. In other words, how this attains the outcome. Whereas NTPs are also including considerations of originality. The problem with an ENTP debater is they keep wanting to say something new that they've not prepared ahead of time because it's their nature. Well, I've got a clever new idea mid-round. I'll say this without having thought it through all the way. And this is debate. It's not like normal life where you can get away with pulling out some random shit out of your ass, and most people go like, "Well, that sounds perfectly sensible." You just can't get away with it in competition debate. So I mean, INTJs have a very high ceiling. I'm tempted to say the best debater I ever had was actually Grace, with an INTJ girl who ran the most sophisticated cases I've ever made, as well as I've ever seen them run, and it was because she could go through a shit ton of arguments and express them all concisely without getting dragged into this sort of spinning tangent shit that NTPs tend to get dragged into.
Okay. Hold on one moment.
If not core fears, desires, what makes the Enneagram types different from the others in their triad? Well, it's either avoidant, withdrawing, or confronting. So it's like 8 is confront, 9 is avoid, 1 is withdraw. 2 is avoid, 3 is confront, 4 is withdraw. 5 is withdraw, 5 is confront, 6 is withdraw, 7 is avoid. So for somebody like me, 7, 4, 1, I am avoidant, confrontational, and then withdrawing. So first and foremost, I just want to keep playing and not have to deal with some genuine barrier to my whim, right? If a barrier to my whim arises, somebody disagrees with me in ways that I don't like or anything like that, then I get very confrontational and meow, 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 meow. That's my second go-to. If that doesn't work, then I withdraw and say, I don't give a fuck about you people anyway. I got my own shit going on. I don't care. I don't care about your mores. I don't care about your judgment. Fuck off. Now, of course, I do care about all those things, but that's the difference between, the conflict inherent in an FE4, right? Is that the reality is I do care very much about your perceptions, but I also refuse to validate your standards. So it's like, I care about your opinions, namely that you think me validating on my standards should trump your standards and your evaluation. And it's like, that's kind of wishful FE thinking. Describe you, Eric, 459. So that would be, first you withdraw on the grounds of shame. Anybody says like, hey, shame on you, you're like, no shame on me. And they go, yes, shame on you. Roll the fuck off.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's your first thing. The second thing is fear. You're like, okay, if I'm feeling intimidated or scared by some looming thing, then I will understand it all the way, and then I won't be scared by it anymore. So that's confronting fear. And then the last one you said was
9.
9. Is that right? Oh yeah, 4, 5, 9. And so that means when somebody comes at you with a pow pow, you're likely to try to, I guess.
I've been doing it your way the whole time. Can't you see that I've been doing this for you? Or, it explodes into an anger point.
I mean, but first it starts out with avoiding. First starts out with avoiding. So if somebody's angry, you go, okay, no problem. Hey, it's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal. We'll just kind of work. And so you'll just concede ground for a little while. Eventually that stops working, and then you probably go to 8, or you just run.
9 gets angry.
Yeah, so they go to 8.
Yeah, they do.
But the thing is,
like how we go to 1.
So it's like, so that's the last thing you do is void. So first you withdraw if people can argue about you. Then if that doesn't work, you're going to try to understand it all the way. And if that doesn't work, you're going to try to go along and get along up to a point.
Yep.
962 is avoid. That is very avoidant of you. You avoid anger, you avoid fear, and then you avoid shame. Don't be mad. Okay, well, how about I scare you then? No, don't scare me. Okay, well, how about I shame you then? No, I'll help you.
I think my brother might be the traditional 369. And
confront, avoid.
Yeah.
I agree with you. But explain 5, 8, 9 INFJ. It can't be 5, 8, 9. You can't be both 8 and 9.
No.
They're in the same set of 3 things.
And Running Fox, this Vogue was for you. Hey girl, hey.
You know what I love more than anything else is voguing. I mean, Rachel will tell you that when we're not streaming, pretty much I'm voguing all the time.
All the time.
I'm framing my face.
Yes. He learned in the 90s from Madonna herself.
Well, obviously, Madonna's my favorite artist. She's a genius, an intuitive genius. Obviously not an ESFP.
No, not at all.
Her fake English accent is extremely convincing. And I admire and respect her a great deal. We could put those statements next to everyone should only use Bing. Statements that nobody, no matter how dumb or deluded, would believe. Hey, give me FE help. My ex-boyfriend sent me a selfie. How do I respond to say that he looks nice without it coming across as hitting on him?
Ooh. That's an FE problem for sure.
I mean, I would not respond, probably.
Yeah, I think not respond is the clearest message.
If you're single and you respond, you're choosing to open that door, no matter how you respond. If you are in a relationship, you could respond by saying, "You look nice. I showed it to my new boyfriend." Something like that.
If you're really good friends, still don't say anything. Or if it's something in particular, like, hey, I like that shirt, or I like your haircut. Like you did with me. Like, you said that... Oh, no, well,
I got
didn't
an
go
idea.
Into particulars. I would go into particulars.
Try this. You call that a dick pic?
Oh, that's the perfect one. That one wins. That's why you come here.
That's
Octavia Silva for that any advice.
You're sure he gets the right message that way.
I think that's...
And you'll get a picture of his penis shortly thereafter. So it's a double win. It's a double win.
Double win. Yes. Especially if you're a really good friend. He'll definitely... That's very funny.
If 5, 8 are the first two, then the last one must be 2, 3, or 4. Correct. So, if you're... So, Oliver Linehan. If you're 5, 8, that means first you're concerned about matters of fear, as I am too. It's like, what threatens me most is stuff that I'm afraid of. Namely, basically, I have email avoidance where I get scared of checking my email for no reason except it's going to require me to interface, I think.
I think 7s are fidgety too. Like, I'm fidgeting right now with the lighter, and it's sometimes like I get up, get down, I sit down, I move this way, I sit on this chair, I move it. It's like fidgety stuff though. It's very like, because 7s are kind of like like a live wire a bit. We're live wires.
Alright, so let's go with 5, 8, 4. So 5 means first you're concerned with fear and basically your concerns about whether or not you're going to be up to a given challenge or whether it's going to kick you in the ass or something, And in that regard, you figure if you understand it fully, you will be up to the challenge. Now, with the 8, it means if after you understand it fully, there's still some pushback or problems coming at you, you're going to pow that and be like, oh, no, fuck you. I have figured this all out, so your pushback is not acceptable. Then third, if you're 4, then that means when they go, no, I'm still not going along with you, I'm still combating you, you go, fuck you, I'm taking my ball and going home. I don't need you and your rules and your standards and your social mores that don't even apply to me. Eric, what do you think of Jordan Peterson saying Donald Trump is well above average IQ wise? I mean, I would think one of a couple of different things. Number one, it shows potentially that IQ is meaningless. Number two, it shows potentially that Jordan Peterson doesn't understand how you can use what comprises a meaningful rough heuristic for IQ. So it's like, if IQ is meaningful, then Jordan Peterson's wrong, and it just means he doesn't understand what comprises a rough heuristic. In other words, he can't figure out somebody's intelligence unless he actually gives them the test. Or it could mean that Trump is secretively, if Jordan Peterson's right, then Trump is much more aware of what he's doing than it would appear to be. Now, the fact is, Trump is not more aware of what he's doing. He's a textbook ESFP. Talk is cheap. Words don't matter. Interested calculus towards everything. You are right or wrong depending on whether you are on his side or not, whether you think he's a great guy or not. So it's like, that's not anything that anybody could meaningfully call intelligence. If he does have a high IQ, then we can conclude that IQ does not correlate with anything that we can meaningfully call intelligence. So Jordan Peterson has demonstrated his shortcomings, so to speak, because one way or the other, Jordan Peterson is addicted to empirical representations of complex, nuanced process interactions, as though because he can nail them down better, they're more meaningful, as though he's completely unaware that nailing down a pale shadow of a hint at a thing is not nailing down the thing itself. My father raced cars. Correct. He raced Mini Coopers in Europe in the 60s. He also worked for the Ford team at Le Mans in the pits as like a hold-up-a-sign guy or something, and was offered a job with Ford by a guy in the Ford Corporation. But he decided when he came back to the U.S. that he didn't want to go there because it would have required him to go to Michigan to at least get the job. Mm. And I don't think he wanted to go to Michigan.
Don't blame him.
So, yes, it is correct. Submerged 2.0. My father raced cars. It also makes me really concerned about the fate of Submerged 1.0. What happened? Did Submerged 1.0 drown? I don't don't think Peterson's ramblings are incoherent exactly. I think they're quite coherent. They're just generally wrong. They're coherent at the expense of correctness. So it's like when somebody in Jordan Peterson's class asked, why is it that red colors make people buy things more in advertisements? His answer was ripe fruit. Back when hunter and gatherers were evolving, there was an advantage to being able to spot ripe fruit, and so that's why humans are attracted to bright colors like red. Now, this is obviously a very cogent argument, coherent, which is to say it's easy to understand what he's saying, but it's totally insanely wrong and stupid. So first of all, ripe fruit is not more often red than some other color. In fact, rarely is ripe fruit red. So that doesn't explain anything. And second of all, if in fact we were buying things more because red links to our background as hunter-gatherers, my question is, why did we do so much evolution as hunter-gatherers, but stopped evolving after we stopped the hunter-gatherer phase? There's no explanation for that. It doesn't make any sense. And thirdly, it's like this evolutionary frame presumes that the genome is an individual that has interests. It's a fundamentally flawed notion. So it's a metaphor and it's bullshit, you know? But it's not incoherent in the sense that, like, Zizek is. Zizek is intentionally diminishing his coherence so that you can't unravel his bullshit. Peterson is trying to make his bullshit more coherent because he believes in it.
I second that notion. That is very ominous, Submerged 2.0. Oh, what'd you get, Zandy? What are your, what's your Enneagram results?
You know who I am. That sounds ominous. Huh, I didn't really read it as ominous, but now that you say it, maybe it could be read that way. I read it as, you actually know who I am. Like that, even though it didn't have an actually in there. Are you going to tell us who you are, or are you just going to let it sit there enigmatically?
That's what I mean.
Is Peterson an ENFP? No, I think Peterson is an ENTJ. I'm quite confident about that, given that I've never typed him or anything. He's one of my more confident celebrity typings.
ENTJ? Yeah.
He's so TE, but he's TI enough, so he's not ENFJ. He's not INFJ. He's got way too much TE for that. He's not INTJ because he seems got too much FE for that. So looking at ENTJ, it explains his relentlessly TE frame where everything has to be empirics and teleologically explained. So does NI and SE work together to alter the immediate present to create a better future path? Does NE use past information from SI to expand many different ideas? Well, so how do NI and SE work together? They don't necessarily alter the immediate present at all. So, in other words, if let's say we're talking about a kickoff in football, and you're one of the people who's running down to tackle the guy, right? NI is going to figure out, like, okay, I see what he's doing here. I somehow know intuitively that he's going to go this way and then juke past the guy on this edge here and cut back and get around the edge. So even though he hasn't done that yet, I'm going to cut that off. So it's important to remember that NISE always is about something specific. It's not I know a better path. It's I have an intuitive notion that I know what that guy's going to do. In other words, some complex weave of cues that cannot be reduced in the way that deliberative things can be reduced has resulted in an intuitive knowledge about the external world. And it's either right or not. It's like probably if it's a good intuitive, they've read something that they haven't even thought about. They don't have articulated in their own head some habit of this person or something in which they're giving it away. There's a tell that they're going to go do this or something. It's pattern recognition that makes the decision. Well, look, if you're talking about NI and SE, right? So the reason I used a football example is because the first thing the NI DOM is going to do is turn to an interface function, be it TE or FE, as in conjunction with their NI in most circumstances. So in order to evaluate how NI and SI work together, we have to come up with the circumstances that eliminates considerations of interface and eliminates considerations of deliberation. A football kickoff is exactly such an example. When you were running down to tackle a guy, it will do you no good to attend via TI. It will do you no good to attend via FE. If you're an INFJ, you're going to have to rely on your NI because your SE is taking its lead from that to have you out intuit the other players on the field. In other words, you're going to have to be in the right spot at the right time in order to make the tackle. You're not going to be able to run him down from behind. So, in that regard, you can see how NI leading the way for SE is about maximizing the effect of the action you do take. SE in dominant, NI in fourth, is about compensating for the inadequacies of your intuitive anticipation. He overran him, but he's so talented that he pivoted on a dime and ran him down from behind for a loss still. That's like SE talent, right? He didn't get the NI right. He bought the it's like, let's say there's a delayed handoff. The quarterback goes back pretending like he's going to pass. And then at the last second, he hands it off to the running back who goes for a draw up the middle. If I'm an intuitive linebacker, I read the fake pass and I don't bite on it. And I wait for the running back. If I'm a extroverted sensing linebacker, I bite on the pass, but I can react and compensate well enough that I can still make the play. It's two different strategies of being effective at impacts. Either be able to impact very well or know where to impact very well. One of the two. In other words, impact hard and a lot or impact precisely are two possible ways to go with that. And the types that are most likely to balance the two are some of the more effective types in typology. ENTJs with NISE. ENTJs with NISE. ENFJs with NISE. And ISTPs with SENI. And ISFPs with SENI are types that are very unlikely to have a procrastination problem / I never finish anything problem / I can't seem to do anything but sit in front of my computer and be unproductive / alpha quadra problems, ENTP, INTP problems, or INFJ problems. Those kind of problems are not likely to plague a SENI type with SE and NI in the second and third slot. Look, Octavia Silva, just because your experience as an ISFP doesn't resonate with what I'm saying, it doesn't change the fact that SENI should be, at the very least, not failing to execute its single path, right? So the advantage of having a single path is that it's a lot easier to execute and follow through on than having 50 different possible paths you're not sure which one you like best. Mm-hmm. That's just the nature of the business. If you don't have 50 different possible paths and not sure which one's the right one, and you only have one path and you're sure it's the right one, then executing that one path is going to be consistently much more accomplished than it will be for somebody who can't settle on a path like me. It is the case. Now, from your own perspective, it may not feel to you like you're good at following through on a path or executing things, but that's because you're not comparing against average or a mean. You're comparing against your own understanding of the ideal. So you have some idealized vision in your head of how you'd be if you were really killing it, and you compare against that and you go like, I'm not killing it at all. Yeah. You're not comparing against how, say, INTPs fail to kill it. I don't know much about your life at all, or your ISFP friends, or anybody else, but the fact is, those types, ISFPs, ISFPs, ENTJs, and ENFJs, are least likely to say, I can't seem to get anything done. I keep starting different things and not finishing them, or it's like I sit down to try to do my thing I have to do, and instead I just go down this rabbit hole, and until the panic monkey forced me, and I scramble to try to get done in 1 minute. That kind of thing is a extroverted intuition problem by and large. It also does tend to correlate with sevens, I guess, but it's not a problem that NISE 2-3 either way is going to really have compared to the other types, maybe not compared to their own ideal.
I mean, my ISFP friend, she was one of my longest friends. She had the same goal as me, maybe like, I don't know, 7 years ago. And I was going to school for social work, and she was going to school for social work. She finished her schooling in half the time that I did, and I wasn't taking nearly as many classes. She also got a job in the field, like, right away. And for an INFJ, like, I really envied that to a degree, because I felt like, I'm like, okay, what am I not getting here? Like, we're literally, like, taking the same subject, and I feel like I'm floating in space. And that, you know, it's something that I'm good at, right? I'm good with, like, people stuff, but that I ultimately don't want to fight the system that much. And you have to do that a lot in social work. But it didn't matter. Like, I was just like, you know, she had the degree, she got the jobs, and she went after it because she had a single plan.
Okay, so Octavio, your inability to do anything has been a huge source of conflict between me and everyone else. That's why I typed you as INFP. So what made me change my mind and decide to type you ISFP again? I don't remember. Because INFP does make a lot more sense given the fact that you're here all the time and engaging with all this stuff all the time and being more verbal than most ISFPs all the time. INFP just makes more sense from the perspective now. Now, I know I talked to you in person and typed you ISFP,
Yeah.
so there must be something that I encountered there that convinced me. Because you're any polar. I mean, if you were an INFP, you'd be SE polar. So what do you consider an inability to do things? Like, do you have a plan and then fail to follow through on it? Or do you explain to me more how that looks? You say my inability to do anything has been a huge source of conflict. So give me an example of something you were unable to do that caused conflict, so I can understand what you actually mean.
A lot of people suffer from procrastination. I mean, INFJs can, like, ideate in their heads all they want, but, like, actually, like, stepping up to the plate, they have to convince themselves a lot, or just be like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it. Actually, that's mostly what INFJs do, is fuck it, I'm just gonna do it, if they're not on a team working with other people. Because FE, I want to get the feedback from others. It's just true.
Email Anthrax, I want to address your question here, and I want to address something to Zandy. So first of all, Email Anthrax says, so I safe to say, and I recognize the patterns and rebuilds a path to the goal despite obstacles, and even predicts the obstacles and the path to avoid them. It's fair to say that attending by introverted intuition is being receptive to realizing the element of a given system or scenario or event or whatever that's determinate or most determinate. Now, not all systems work like that. So there's nothing determinate about YouTube. It's totally you have to have a combination of different things. There's no single algorithm you can try to work to make yourself successful. It's a lot of different factors involved as to whether or not you're successful, and none of them are determinate. None of them render the other things irrelevant. to the extent that a system has aspects to it that are determinate or that make other factors that normally are considerations potentially irrelevant, then that's the kind of system that NI is most suited to be effective in. And remembering that it's a knowledge function as well. So NI is most possible to describe the effectiveness of NI in specific instances. And we make a mistake when we try to say, well, NI DOM understands meow 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 about the world. We're trying to magicalize something that is more concrete than that. It's like the frame of reference is what's determinant that I don't have to have attained from experience. So it's like when something is determinate by what's experiential, then INFJs will tend to have trouble with that, and they'll tend to keep trying to look for universal frames to fit it under. Well, it's got to be an example of some kind of pattern. Well, it's an example of what it looks like when it's not an example of a pattern, but rather it's a unique, particularized manifestation of your own personal stuff that's just you, you know? So it's like, it is the case that many things in life are subject to NI more successfully than SI, which is to say the universalist knowledge function more successfully knows about stuff if you just sort of quantitatively look at it than does the particularist knowledge function. However, the universalist knowledge function is subject to the same kind of wrong assumption, but the flip side of it, as SI is. So SI is subject to the wrong assumption that you can't really know anything except through experience. And the NI false assumption is that you can know every experience as examples of a universal pattern.
Yeah, especially.
So, and both assumptions are too much one way, right?
It is. It's overwhelming. But I have to say, a lot of that. I mean, having you in my life, it's like the shoe that fits.
It's amazing how two metaphysicians being together who have an explicit and stated understanding of how their attention manifests as or represents, I guess, their habits and stuff, and then how therefore her way complements and or conflicts with my approach, and how that can be informative about how I'm self-limiting in that, and not so much in any willful way, but rather because I'm inherently unable to see beyond these walls here and here, as everybody is because of my configuration, that knowing about it intellectually and then having a person manifest it with me, half of the thing, the half that I'm curious, I want to have manifest with me, while sharing the same attentional manners on the other half, makes it easy, I think, for both of us to maximize our optimality. You know, it's like,
I completely agree.
I think it's fair to say that you're more optimal when you're less wholly reflexive and can pull back from your reflexes sooner.
Yeah.
So for me, I might ignore NI still, but I probably won't ignore it for as long as I did in the past.
Same with me and E, really. I mean, it brings out the creative, you know, just like kind of like, it's just really good for me to be like, oh no, not everything is like that. I don't know, it's just, I don't take things as seriously anymore, like all that metaphysical stuff that I had learned, you know? It's like I see light in like a yellow hue now, where it was only pink before. It was like all kind of like illusion. It felt like an illusion anyway. Shit. Oh, you know what I loved? Before your mom went to her place of care now, she used to tell me how funny she thought the two of us were together. I'm glad that we were able to make her laugh.
Bad Brad is here saying not everyone can negotiate with themselves. It's more like an internal prisoner's dilemma. I'm curious on what's the analog there. I like possibly where you're going with your analogy, but I'm curious what the analogs are. Can you articulate them? FI is another word for interested encroachment calculus. I like your inclusion of the word encroachment there. You know, I will agree with what Oliver Lionhan says here. ISFJs are really common and can vary quite a bit between individual and individual.
Yes.
Why? Because they have a particular knowledge function as their dominant function, which means they're shaped very much by their experiences. You know, a damaged ISFJ is unlikely to, is much harder to heal.
Yeah. Like, I have a cousin who's an ISFJ, and she grew up, she's the eldest of all the cousins, and she's the eldest of her family.
Bye, Running Fox.
Bye, Running Fox. And she definitely, like, my mom is always like, I don't understand how she does it. She does so much, and she has, like, a pleasant attitude because she grew up in a home where she was very supported. And she got what she wanted most of the time, too. Like, she always had her own room, and, like, she did a lot of the babysitting, so she was good with kids already. It was, like, I don't know, she made, I don't know.
So is the analog then, to the prisoner's dilemma, the competing interests within the self? That's what I'm trying to get to, is what is the analog? What are the analogs? So in the prisoner's dilemma, you've got two individuals acting in their own self-interest, and as a consequence, they don't produce the optimal outcome. So he's saying, it's not really a negotiation with yourself, it's more of a prisoner's dilemma. Well, I don't think it's a negotiation with yourself either. I think it's an opportunity to get out of a reflexive loop quicker than you would otherwise, basically. If I normally will reflexively hammer away at ignoring NI 5 times, more knowledge intellectually, in other words, more SI experience with NI truths regarding the nature of functions means I'm likely to ignore it only 3 times instead of 5 times. That's what I'm saying. Is it helps me to be around Rachel, to be trapped less long in my reflexes, and to be more open to alternative modalities that might be more well suited to the circumstance, even though they're not my habitually comfortable ways of dealing with things.
I wanna, can I bring up like a theoretical thing?
Sure.
Alright, so in theory, if Brad Pitt is ISFP and Angelina Jolie is ESTP, as they are typed a lot on forums.
Okay.
Wouldn't it be a difficult divorce because one knows what it wants but doesn't know how to express it, and the other one doesn't know what it wants but wants to get the shit done?
I mean, the thing is with an ISFP, it's going to be as difficult or as easy as the ISFP wants it to be. If the ISFP is really caught up in their FI and have their feet dug into cement shoes, then you got yourself a battle on your hand. If the ISFP is the one who wants out of the relationship, it'll probably be easy.
ESTP.
I know, but what I'm saying, ESTP and ISFP, right?
Oh, yeah,
if the ESTP is dumping the ISFP,
no, it's not.
difficult.
It's the
If the
way,
ISFP is
yeah.
dumping the ESTP, not so difficult.
The ESTP is dumping the ISFP.
Right, that's difficult.
Yeah. They're having trouble, like, over the settlement of their chateau they had in France where they made wine. He's all like, I want to go visit there. This is a place we made. It's our home with our kids. And she's all like, you're an alcoholic, you shouldn't be around alcohol. Like, it's just so messy. I feel bad. Like,
ISFJ do tend to avoid. But I mean, if you're saying ISFJs with those three types are very fragile, thing is, I think Alpha Quadra in general is quite fragile, and I think those of us in Alpha Quadra who were loved unconditionally, but not, it's like loved for real, which means also held to account, not just spoiled, but for people who are loved unconditionally, in other words, they are held to account, but they know that when they are held to account, it doesn't diminish their value as a person. Rather, it just is a mistake. It doesn't represent them. It deviates from them. I think that's one good way to I think it's one good way to can I keep it? Broke my train of thought.
mine too.
I got a lot of topics to cover, Octavia. I mean,
what any is about.
I mean, look. Here's the thing, Octavia. You want to affirm all these various statements that suggest different things, and you want to say, "Well, my experience differs from your description of ISFP." So then I go, "Okay, well, maybe you're not an ISFP then."
Yeah.
And you go, "Question. Let me defend my typing at least." I'm like, "Well, you're the one who's saying you don't agree with the description of ISFP, so maybe you're saying the description is wrong." Except my point is, as an FI Dom, you aren't really comparing it probably yourself meaningfully against anything. You're just, that's your self-concept you're relating, not probably an accurate description of your relationship with doing shit, At least attentionally. Or it might not be. I don't know. It's hard for me to say. So it's like I don't really have much more else to say about it because, look, Octavia, I keep asking you give me an example so I know what you mean when you say that. You didn't give me any example. I said, give me an example of you not doing and it causing problems. Oh, you said it twice? Oh, well, I mean, Jesus, woman. There's a lot of people saying things. I got a lot of things I got to respond to.
Well, I love you.
Let me go up and see what she said.
Excuse me.
I cannot do most chores because of a mental block. I have depression and executive function problems. I failed to finish personal projects. I did not care my own hygiene properly until I was 21-ish. So, okay. Alright, well. So what chores do you think you are avoiding that need to be done? And what things do you actually do? You don't avoid everything. For example, you manage to feed yourself occasionally, so you don't avoid eating entirely, right? You manage to go to the bathroom, so you don't avoid pooping entirely. So what I'm saying is, the chores you're avoiding, do you believe they're things you need to do, or is somebody else telling you you need to do these things? You know what I'm saying? It's like I need information to understand if my thinking about your worldview is wildly off or not. I don't really have any assumptions about your worldview right now. I'm trying to figure out what it is by getting more information. So even though you gave me some information, you don't do chores, that's still vague, right? Give me an example of a chore you believe you should be doing that you're not doing. Explain to me why you should be doing it. So you don't like doing boring chores. Do you have I don't see that as contraindicative of what I'm saying about SE and I. You know, that you have a given path and you have no problem to following through on it. It doesn't sound to me like you've committed to the path of doing the dishes and vacuuming and cleaning your room. So why would you follow through on it? Do you think it's the single best path? I don't think so. What advice would you give to an ENTJ who thinks that deductive logic is always trumped and superseded by empirics? Well, you would have to... What advice would I give to them? Like, in other words, am I actually trying to help them understand how they're frame locked, or am I trying to beat them in a debate round, or what? If I'm actually trying to get them to understand how they're frame locked, then I think the best way to do that is to point out that it's bad TE to think that TE is what matters, because you're ignoring the particular qualities of given systems. Some systems are conducive to empirics, and some systems are not. So failing to adjust appropriately to the realities that are determinate in a given situation or system should be something that ENTJs are very willing to hear critique on and expect themselves to validate against. Okay, so you said ISFPs, I like to sit on their computers all day doing nothing. That is what I responded to. I mean, if that's what you do, you sit on your computer all day doing nothing, then what that means is you're not making pictures, right? You're not making stuff. You're just reading, getting ideas for things you might make. Because that's the thing that INTPs and INFPs have going on, is they're much more getty, right? The get functions, TI and FI, get information all the time. It's maximally get-ish when it's paired with extroverted intuition, because you are ideating about information you've gotten internally, presumably to put out eventually a preferable interpretation or something, but there's no sense of urgency in ever getting there, because that represents the end of using your tool function. Okay, I have to stop using my tool function now and use my polar function. Is not something anybody chooses to do normally. The stuff Spacey describes as seeing too many possibilities for what to do and freaking out if it's stuff INFPs tend to struggle with, which is everything that requires any legwork. Yeah, in that case, Spacey is accurately describing what happens to INTPs and INFPs and why they can't seem to, pick a single thing to work on and finish it. Now, ENTPs have trouble with it too, but my NI is actually valued even though it's ignored. So I ultimately like finishing things. I like to have complete things, right? And my SE is 8th instead of 7th, which means it's there to serve my extroverted intuition in being extroverted. And it successfully does so quite a bit, So even though ENTPs are famous for not finishing things and having multiple started projects, we are not... The reason we're not INTPs is because when we get the urge to do something, we start it. And some of those things we finish. INTPs, they don't ever start it when they get the idea to do something. They're still ideating, making sure that they've gotten enough information and ideated enough before they actually stop their nature and apply the opposite of their nature to the thing, because it's necessary to do so. Right, well, and that does differentiate you from INFPs or INTPs. Abraham's here again?
Hey, Abraham, or is it Yeti?
No, it's actually Otter Media talking about Abraham commands it.
Oh, again?
Everyone seems to think my former assistant coach at Autonomy Debate is some kind of like super powerful being or something. I don't understand why.
Do you think he is?
Well, his name, hilariously, is Abraham Lincoln.
That is so funny.
I shit you not. That is his name. His last name is Rincon in Spanish, right? Spelled Rincon.
Oh my god.
He sounds like a Chinese person pronouncing Abraham Lincoln. Alright? Hello, my name is Abraham Lincoln. Yeah, that's his name. So, I mean, it's true that being named Abraham Lincoln, and if I were named Abraham Rincon, I would definitely pronounce my last name Lincoln.
Yeah.
So when I introduce myself, they go, hey, I'm John. Oh, hey, I'm Abraham Lincoln. What? Abraham Lincoln? Did you say Abraham Lincoln? No, Lincoln. Your last name's Lincoln and your parents named you Abraham? If your last name is Lincoln, you have an obligation to not name your kid Abraham. Just like, if your last name is Churchill, you shouldn't name your kid, or if your last name is Birchill, you shouldn't name your kid Winston, right? You shouldn't name your kid Winston Birchill.
Oh god.
That'd be a very poor decision. Or if your name is Attell, you shouldn't name your kid Gene, because you don't want the name to be genital.
That's why you're Eric and not Heinrich.
A hearty brew.
That sounded like it.
Alright, I think that's going to wrap it up for this stream. I want to thank you all for being here. I had fun. You had fun. Rachel had fun. All combined, there was a lot of fun had. I would like to mention, however, Octavio, don't even worry your pretty little head about it, alright? I didn't even cross my mind that you were being difficult or pushy or whatever you said. But what did cross my mind is Bad Brad. See, this is the thing that is kind of frustrating, but a reality that I encounter all the time. Bad Brad comes in, rolls in, and says something that apparently he intends only to make him sound smart.
Pretty
Okay, but
prolific.
I mistakenly think that he's bringing up a real point, right? Like, hey, maybe there's something to this. This prisoner's dilemma analogy.
Right.
Bad Brad, what do I asked you for the analogs a long time ago.
I don't think maybe analogs was too big of a word.
Yeah, that's you, Bad Brad. You made an analogy.
Yeah.
The two ends of the analogy are the analogs. So what is the analog here? If you're going to bring up the topic of prisoner's dilemma as an alternative understanding to sort of a more correctly informed map of reality, I guess. I'm not sure what the alternative would be. Then, do you think it's because there are competing interests in yourself? Is it because I just don't see it as comparable because the varying relationships between function mechanics like proportionality or inverse proportionality and stuff are more complicated than the zero-sum engine that underlies Prisoner's Dilemma, I would say. So it's like, it is not the case that I lose NE in practical sense when I have less of it, because what I'm having is probably more powerful from a frame of me as an agent. Whereas, typically in those kind of situations, you're talking about stuff that can be measurably compared against each other, right? So it's how do we know whether or not it's a non-optimal outcome? Well, you have to compromise. But the point about cognitive functions is that compromise, quote unquote, which is to say, being less reflexively locked in your natural frame, is not something that works like that. In other words, more example of a frame is not necessarily better, and less example of a frame is not necessarily worse. What is your icon? It looks like an animal. Let me see if I can see what it is if I make it bigger. Maybe I can see what Bad Brad's icon is. Maybe I can see his icon. If I make this super big, I can see his icon. Yeah. You know, every song should have at some point in it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's not really a song. You know, it's just blowing smoke up all of our collective asses. I can't see what that is. It just looks like a random schmanity schman.
Like, Winston's mommy
Oh,
Matilda
yeah.
Ferret,
That's
Octavia
fine.
Silva. Yeah, it looks like a frog or something. I don't know what it is.
I don't know what it is
That's
either.
why I asked.
Might just be a textured background, like
Leopard print.
like in GIMP they've got these. It's a pickerel frog. Pickerel frog, huh? Well, that's interesting.
Oh, it is a frog.
That's a manner of frog I don't believe I've heard of before.
Me neither. I want to look it up.
We should Google it.
Yeah.
Curious Cover is going to morph into a spleen. Good for you, Curious Cover. I've been saying you should do that for years now. Pine needles. Oh, it's pine needles, huh? Isn't it pine needles? Piney needle way. Isn't it pine
Oh, it
needles?
is like a leopard frog. It's so funny.
It's like a leopard frog. Are you a frog enthusiast? Would you call yourself an amphibophile?
Ooh, I like that. Are you an amphibophile?
I'm not really an amphibophile. I'd say I'm more of a mammallophile. I like cute little mammals.
Animals. Yeah.
Good experiences happen when spleens are involved, no matter how, I guess. So, okay, I'm going to WRAPITUP wrap it up. Thanks for being here. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese.
What's the kind of picker?
Pick,
A cereal?
what did you say it was? A pickerel frog.
There you go. Pickerel frog. Oh, it's just like a...
Zandy's mom's face is also a pickerel frog. I don't know if you're aware of that.